Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Who has the power to order 100 police, 50 police cars, and 4 police riot horses to raid a peaceful barbecue restaurant, change its locks, seize the property, seize the owner, and jail him overnight without a trial? Who has that kind of power? Normally the answer in a democracy like ours would be that an independent police commander would make the operational decision that such a raid is necessary, based probably on a legal opinion for something so large. Lawyers would probably convince a judge in a court for a warrant or a search warrant. So you'd have a couple of checks and balances, a police commander using his discretion, getting advice, a judge scrutinizing the legality of such a move. But that did not happen last week. The order for that massive raid came from an unelected, unaccountable health bureaucrat who works for the mayor. Public health officer no one had heard of until the pandemic made her a media star a few months ago. Eileen de Villa is her name. It's her name on the public health order in the window of Adamson's Barbecue. It's her name on the trespass notice on the site, telling everyone that she controls the property now. And according to a police superintendent, it was her who ordered him to conduct the largest police raid in more than a decade. Listen to him say she just ordered him to do it, and he just complied. Actually, there's a weasel word in there. Tell me if you can catch it.
Today, as you're all aware, we were at Adamson's Barbecue at 7 Queen Elizabeth Way. Last night, we received an order from Dr. de Villa, essentially giving us power under the, her power under the Health Protection Act.
So she essentially ordered him to do it? And notice how he accidentally first said a judge ordered him to do it before he remembered she wasn't a judge. Is that how it would normally work? A judge determines search warrants. A judge is a check and balance to police raids. But a public health bureaucrat giving an order? So who is this woman who can launch 1,000 policemen and horses into battle at the stroke of her pen? Perhaps we should get to know her a little bit, as she seems to be our new queen. Though that's not fair to Queen Elizabeth, who would never dare to order the police to do anything. She knows enough about the rule of law in a constitutional monarchy not to turn into a petty tyrant. So my apologies to the real Queen Elizabeth. I should know that Queen Eileen de Villa is not a lawyer, not a judge, not a police officer, and has no training in any of those things. A lawyer would know her raid was illegal. A judge would remind her it's unconstitutional. And a policeman would say it was operationally foolish, an indication of a police state run by an emotionally vain authoritarian to have such a display. It was so dangerous charging horses into a crowd. De Villa has her own army, though. She really does have her own army. It's a staff of almost 2,000 people, a budget of about $250 million, but they don't get to carry guns like the real cops. They're little health inspectors checking restaurants for rat droppings, and increasingly they're obsessed with pushing hard drugs into neighborhoods throughout Toronto in ironically named safe injection sites. Even back in April, which was the height of the pandemic, de Villa was obsessed with opening up these public shooting galleries for hard drug users. Your church is closed. Your business is closed. Your school back then was closed. Those aren't essential. But by God, this doctor wanted illegal drug users to have government-sponsored injection sites. That's essential. Look at this. Toronto aims to reopen city-run supervised injection site this weekend. Got it. Using illegal drugs isn't just fine, it's going to be subsidized and funded by the public health officer. Smoke crack? Sure. But smoked meat? No, your barbecue will be raided. What a strange woman. But it's the difference between being a public health doctor and being a real doctor. Oh, de Villa has her MD degree for sure, but that's about it. She doesn't have any patience. She doesn't look at people as individuals. She sees us like Bill Gates sees us. We're just ants in an ant colony. And she doesn't have to care for us and get our consent when she gives us medical advice. She's, a queen. Just ask her, and ask the police, apparently, who bend the knee to her. A doctor's like a lawyer, like any other professional advisor. They give advice, and the patient or the client gives instructions to the doctor or the lawyer. A doctor can advise you to lose weight, advise you to stop smoking or drinking. Lots of good advice. But at the end of the day, you're a grown-up. You can make the decision. It's part of freedom. Well, Davila has all the instincts of a doctor, telling people how to live, and good for her, but they're just her opinions. Unlike practicing doctors, though, she doesn't have to convince people, she orders people. I've never heard of a public health officer, ever, that isn't authoritarian in their blood. By nature, if you're a doctor and go into the public health field, you are a control freak. You are someone who seeks to impose your will on everyone, and you are blinded by your own expertise. I mean, if a real doctor told an actual patient to put on a mask to have sex, they'd be laughed at, and they'd probably lose patience. Theresa Tam said exactly that, and the media party nodded along. Talk about control freak.
I think the public has to know this is one of the worst case scenarios in terms of an infectious disease outbreak, in that their cooperation is sought. If there are people who are non-compliant, there are definitely laws and public health powers that can quarantine people in mandatory settings. It's potential you could track people, put bracelets on their arms, have police and other setups to ensure quarantine is undertaken.
Anyways, like everyone else in Canada, I had never heard of Davila or Theresa Tam before the pandemic made them both so insufferable. All of these nobodies making $300,000, $400,000 a year. I should say suddenly they became nerdy celebrities, and the media loved them, and they loved it. They weren't just setting up hard drug consumption sites and dealing with rat droppings in restaurants now. Now, they were internet celebrities. They were telling everyone how to live, and not surprisingly, the answer was always to live in fear and to look to the government and control as the solution. If your only tool is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. If the entire philosophy of your profession is government control, don't be surprised if the state response to this particularly bad flu season, which is statistically all that COVID is, don't be surprised if the response is perpetual lockdowns, paranoia, and the submissive signal of wearing a useless mask. Are you obedient? Prove it. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.